At the start of this project, I was chasing one thing, a close cinematic shot of a great blue heron with an anamorphic lens. When I first started, I didn't even know where to begin. I had to answer two questions. How do I get close to a bird without disturbing it? And would changing my gear help or slow me down? Hey, I'm Thomas. In this film, I'm going to show you how and why I built two anamorphic filmmaking rigs to chase a single shot of one of my favorite birds. But nothing is ever as easy as you want it to be. In episode 2, I introduced my new Sirui 150mm anamorphic lens. 150mm is about the most reach that is currently available with budget anamorphic lenses. This lens allowed me to get two of my closest anamorphic shots of the heron so far. After I got the close-ups, my next goal was to be able to document some hunting behaviors. So I started to wonder, what if I took this chase to the water?
It's a deal breaker, baby, when you treat me like you do.
For my boat, I chose the Excursion 4 inflatable boat, and I will be pairing it with the Lumix GH7 and the Osmo Pocket 3. And after a few months of shooting with the Lumix S5 2X and the 150mm, I found that I needed to add a few more things to it to make filming easier. But we'll get to that.
Roll it, baby.
Some of you might be wondering why I went with an inflatable instead of a kayak. The first reason I chose this particular inflatable is stability. With the inflatable, it's much harder to flip over in compared to a kayak, and the last thing I want is my gear in the water. The Excursion 4 also fits easily in my trunk, so I don't need a trailer or a roof rack. And with a 4-person capacity, it's more than capable of holding me and my gear. So for the first version of my boat, I only made 2 small modifications. Later in 2006, I'll be making a lot more. So first, I wanted to be able to sit up high and stand up in my boat. So I had some old plywood in my house, cut it to fit the shape of the inside of my boat, and I waterproofed it. For seating, I'm using this old ottoman. It doubles as storage, and for now, it doesn't need to look pretty. It just needs to work. To help with movement and positioning, I added a trolling motor. The most important part of the boat build is the front mount. On the front plywood panel, I mounted the bottom plate for the iFootage Cobra RBA300, a round base monopod I bought years ago for weddings and never used it. This is what allows me to quickly attach different pieces of gear using quick release plates, like my Osmo Pocket 3, which is the behind the scenes setup. When I want to use the boat for actual anamorphic filming, I switch out the Osmo for my old RSC2 along with my GH7, paired with the Sirui 20mm autofocus anamorphic lens. I would like to introduce you to my new filmmaking boat, which I call I.B.I.S. Now I needed to turn my S5 2X into a wildlife focus rig. The first thing I knew was that I didn't want to change batteries in the field. So to run the entire rig from a single power source, I added a V-mount battery plate kit. The next thing I needed was more mounting points for accessories. For that, I added carbon fiber rods and a NATO top handle. Next was the dummy battery, then the lens support, and then the 150mm lens. This 150mm anamorphic lens is the heart of this setup and this entire project, but it also introduces the biggest challenge. The focus throw is only 150 degrees. To show why this matters, I filmed a comparison with my Mikey 35mm, which has roughly a 300-degree focus throw. On the Mikey lens, when you are pulling focus with such a large focus throw, focusing is really precise. because each turn of the focus ring only moves the focus plane a small amount, giving you more control and fewer missed shots. So the longer the focus throw is on the lens, the easier it is to make final adjustments when pulling focus. On the other hand, with the 150mm, with only a 150-degree focus throw, even small movements can push you in and out of the focus plane very quickly. That's why I had to add a follow focus. Now, a follow focus doesn't change the focus throw of the lens, but it does help me be more precise and consistent when pulling focus. And to clearly see what I'm focusing on, I use a 5-inch monitor. When filming wildlife, sound is just as important as the image. So, I have 3 audio configurations for the setup. The first is a simple setup using a shotgun mic mounted to the front of my top handle. If I want to step it up, I can use my Lumix XLR adapter and run a proper XLR shotgun mic. Though the trade-off is I can't use the top handle in that configuration. My third configuration is adding a wireless mic system. This is what I use if I want to film myself or interview someone else. I got to test this setup at a recent trade show I filmed.
Some of the different lines that we offer.
The best part about this wireless setup is flexibility. I can quickly remove the shotgun mic and place it on a small set of tripod feet to capture cleaner field audio away from the camera. The last must-have is light filtration. Depending on the light and the weather, I either use a matte box with a 4x5.65 filter or variable NDs when conditions are constantly changing.
That fisherman.
This is Don, a professional wildlife photographer who just moved to Atlanta.
Sort of right in between. So I love the aspect ratio difference too, with framing it with these 2 trees here.
I knew if I went out with someone who has more experience with birds, I'd learn a lot faster. So instead of Don just coming out and teaching me more about capturing wildlife with my camera, we framed it as a friendly photography competition to give that day a little bit more edge. The rules were simple. We would have 4 hours to photograph as many different species of birds as possible. Don stayed on land, I stayed in my boat.
Alright, so I'm gonna set a 4-hour timer. You ready? On 3. 1, 2, 3.
Go.
Alright, good luck.
Thank
Here we go, guys.
Go.
4 hours.
I came over here because this heron is coming back actually.
Let's go with ND 16. Alright, time to catch up.
By the time I finally finished setting up the boat and pushed off, I had already burned a half an hour.
Okay, let's get some
For this
photos.
competition, I tried to push my reach. I used a vintage Canon 300mm L series lens from 1997 on the GH7, attached by a Viltrox speed booster and a 1.4x teleconverter. On paper, this was just over 600 millimeters. In practice, this was the perfect setup, but because of my Viltrox adapter, it kind of turned into a nightmare. Meanwhile, Don was doing what he does best, getting amazing shots of birds.
This heron does not want to be photographed. So I think I'm gonna leave it be. So right now there are a bunch of little songbirds here in these bushes in front of me. And what I've done is I've positioned myself with the sun, not really at my back, but enough to the side that I should be able to get some great shots. In fact, there's a little Carolina wren. I think I can get a good, oh no, you turn it in. Little sparrow.
I'm breaking down the whole setup. I keep getting the lens not attached properly. Error message.
Back in my boat, my lens disconnection errors didn't stop. So I decided to strip the rig down, removing the monitor, SSD, V-mount, and the lens support bracket. By the time I was actually shooting, I had 3 hours and 16 minutes left. So I started with the easy birds.
I just spotted Thomas. Let's see if he's got himself a heron up in the tree there.
I'm having some problems with the boat. And I know what the problem is. When I made this quick connect, I kind of cut into one of the wires and I was like, oh, it'll be okay. And the wire kind of is giving out. So I have to hold it together to give the trolling motor power. Yeah, I'm gonna have to roll back.
Just as I started to find my rhythm, I.B.I.S threw me a test I didn't see coming.
Camera.
My trolling motor died. The night before, I installed quick connects to make hooking up the motor faster. But when I crimped the terminal, I slightly nicked the 6-gauge wire. It didn't seem like a big deal at the time, but out on the water, under load, the small cut finally gave way and the wire snapped. While I was trying to row my balloon through the water, Don was quietly capturing every bird species at the lake. He was already at 16 species and thinking about breakfast.
I brought some tools with me. I fixed it. I had to strip it and take away the quick connect.
This is the part of the build you can't prepare for. Some things you can only learn when something breaks far from shore, like how heavy the boat feels when you row it fully loaded with gear. How do I keep my gear dry when I have to row? What type of tools should I always have with me so I can quickly fix my battery connections? These are all the things I thought about in those 20 minutes when everything was going wrong.
Luckily, I had my camera tool. I believe that this is a small rig tool right here, and it saved me.
Even with all the setbacks, I loved being out on the water with I.B.I.S. So, did the boat give me an advantage? Not today, but it definitely gives my shots a different perspective. And when things are working properly, it's such a magical experience moving around the entire lake.
My first kingfisher shot ever. Disconnected. I got it though. My first kingfisher shot ever. First boat's turning.
It was so easy to get close-up shots of the heron with 600 millimeters. Because I can now be so much more stealthy on the boat, I still believe I can get my final shot of the heron catching a fish with just 150 millimeters. After the challenge, Don shared a ton of insights about photographing birds, and we'll definitely be doing this again. If you want to see how the competition actually ended and who won, go check out Don's video. I've linked it in the description below. As fall slowly turned into winter, I was ready to get my final shots of the heron. My final day of filming started foggier than I've ever seen the lake. There was no way I could take the boat out in this. There are too many submerged trees, so there's too much risk of puncturing my boat. So while I waited, I documented the foggiest lake with my 150mm. The fog turned the lake into a blank canvas. Animals moving through it felt almost unreal. The background of the squirrels and birds were completely erased and replaced by a wall of white clouds. To my surprise, I wasn't alone. Fishermen stood along the docks, wrapped in fog. Others were just there to enjoy the spectacle of fog from the shoreline. The atmosphere was low and suspended. We all became silhouettes waiting for the lake to finally reveal itself. And of course, I had to say hello to my ducks. The heron may be my muse, but the ducks are my stress relief. They calm me, they make me smile. And today, against the fog, they looked especially graceful. After filming the fog, I actually went home and came back after a few hours once the fog finally lifted. It was finally time to get my final shots. I have other projects I need to complete for this channel, so I won't be using the boat again until spring of 2026. Either way, these would be my final attempts to capture the heron catching a fish. Spending over a year at this lake, almost every week, gave me an advantage. I knew the heron's favorite spots. I began my hunt for my final shot. With the help of the boat, I found the heron pretty quickly. Now, I had another problem. The wind was a little strong and the current kept pushing the boat. I used the trolling motor to correct, but I was coming in way too fast. And so, after that, I searched for another 2 hours circling the lake and I could not find the heron. I headed back toward the dock so I could call it a day. But my just one more shot ADHD kicked in because I saw a squirrel. Then I noticed some ducks swimming nearby and decided to grab one final shot of my friends before packing up and heading back home. The angles I can get from the boat are incredible, shots I could never get from land. And then I looked to my left and I couldn't believe it. The heron was right there, 10, maybe 15 feet away, staring straight at me.
There can't be no light if darkness don't exist. He never left my side. He showed me the way.
I turned the boat as quickly as I could, dropped the anchor, and waited. A family walked up to take photos. I was sure this was it, and the heron was gonna fly away. The heron tensed up and started walking. Oh, it's gonna fly away. But then the family got their shots and they left. The heron was now more relaxed while it stepped into the water. And then I saw a fisherman walking up behind the heron. I talk to a lot of fishermen here. They always tell me they fish where the heron is because the heron knows where the fish are. But I wasn't ready for him to cast his line right at the heron. And somehow the heron didn't care. It was locked in, fishing mode. This might actually happen. I might get a shot of it catching a fish. I've been filming in Blackmagic Raw all day, so at this point I checked my SSD and I had 25 minutes left. 2 terabytes, nearly full.
I did not bring an extra battery because I didn't want to stay here that long. That's why it forces me to go home. So I'm trying to think if I stay here. Now it may have caught a fish. But look at the geese crossing.
2 missed strikes, nothing. Then the heron moved closer to the fisherman. I'm guessing it was thinking that the fisherman now knows where the fish are. Then I saw it. 10 minutes of record time left. And now I needed to move the boat because the heron moved out of view. So I had to risk it. I pulled up the anchors and moved closer. And then I dropped my anchors again, and then the heron stepped deeper into the water, and I ran out of footage. Luckily, I had the 64 gigabyte SD card that was in the GH7. I put the SD card in the S5 IIX. I changed the settings as fast as I could because remember, the heron is in the water right in front of me. So I could use the SD card in the S5 IIX. I had to cancel RAW recording and cancel SSD recording. And then I hit record. This would be my final shot of the series. I got it. I finally got it. I finally got it. I will be fine over there.